Thank you. Thank you everyone for taking the time to come be together, near and far. It's very special, very precious, so rejoicing in that. And as usual, it's the heart of every teaching, the root, the foundation of every experience we have, our motivation. So again, just as always, part of our practice in the beginning, just really connecting with our motivations and these three vast, beautiful, powerful motivations that entail our complete practice. And that's why we begin with that. So our joy, our appreciation for this precious moment we have and this precious life. All the things we're free of, all the situations we have, all the good outer and inner conditions, especially related to exploring and bringing out our own innate goodness and sanity and realness. And then our great devotion and purity vision of the sacred nature of this moment, this experience, reflecting on the three Vajras, all form and appearances as the enlightened display, all sound and movement, enlightened speech of mantra, all space and awareness and thought, the vast expanse of pure mind. And then in all this great fortune, we've had this opportunity to come together and practice. And as usual, we're going to continue with a little bit of reflecting. We're all practicing together and studying, and practicing. So I wanted to get back, we're really encouraging a little bit of discourse. It'd be nice if we were all in the same room, but we're not. So we do have communication. So we do have a couple questions that good questions. And they're both particularly within our Bodhichitta practice. So of course, within our Ngondro practice, Bodhichitta is so essential. It's the second main frame that we spend time meditating with. And like Dudjom Rinpoche, it's the root of the whole path, arousing our Bodhichitta intention. The whole path is all within Bodhichitta. So maybe I'll just kind of put forth the questions that are here and then kind of come back and reflect to that. But again, just keeping in mind that Bodhichitta, again, it's not its own little separate section, just like none of the sections of our Ngondro practice are solely just there. They're aspects and atmospheres and qualities that pervade every aspect of all the sections of Ngondro, which means all the practices we'll ever do, whose aim is what? To recognize things as they are, to remove our obscurations and their causes, and bring out innate wisdom, compassion, love, kindness, uncontrived, genuine love, wisdom, compassion, beauty, which is bodhicitta. And so it's the root, which means it's also the sprouts, the branches, the leaves, and the fruits, and not just one fruit, but millions and billions of fruits. There's so many praises to the qualities of bodhicitta, because again, it is ultimately our innate nature, our own Buddha nature is bodhicitta realized. So I'm going to get to the question here. So this is from Julie wrote, I think maybe from one of the last sessions, and during the bodhicitta session, of course, the prayer that we're saying is our bodhisattva vow, kind of what we're renewing in every section, restoring our bodhicitta motivation and inspiration. And so that is right. From now until samsara becomes empty, I shall accomplish the benefits and happiness of all sentient parent beings. And so then Julie was asking, the phrase, until samsara becomes empty, doesn't really mean empty, like a movie theater after the show is over, does it? Or is it more like we sometimes see the view defined, the perfect equality of samsara and nirvana? So that's the first question around the first line. And then the second line, I shall accomplish the benefits and happiness of all sentient parent beings, is also very puzzling for me. Although I had probably heard about things being insubstantial many times, I only understood this in connection to sentient beings when I read Dudjom Rinpoche's account of his dream, in which Longchenpa convinced him that sentient beings with their own individual mind streams did not exist. A disturbing and almost terrifying idea. So I don't really know how to understand or even attempt to accomplish this thing. And also, isn't there an I to accomplish? Another sticking point. So, yeah. I think the point is that's exactly where we're stuck. With I, right? The source of all suffering, the first noble truth, and second noble truth is, as long as we have our basic ignorance and ego clinging and engage with negative emotions, instantly that brings up the whole fruit of our samsara experience. So definitely working with investigating our concept of I is so vital, so important, so really important. And that is the path. Within our practice, I think, we practice the unity of the three yanas, the Theravada, the foundational Buddhism, Mahayana, and an extension of that, the Vajrayana. And it seems worth just kind of remembering too. Sometimes we hear Mahayana, and of course I think we've all heard it. Mahayana is in relation to foundational Buddhism, or Hinayana, which is sometimes called the lesser vehicle. But that's in no way like a diminutive statement. I think sometimes it's also maybe like the smaller, more narrow-viewed vehicle, a smaller. But it's just like all the teachings of the Buddha, until we ourselves have more realization and stability and knowledge, we're not going to be really of much help to anybody. Not ourselves, not anyone. So within the Hinayana, right, the focus there is self-liberation, which is very practical, again, for that reason. Unless we ourselves are going to work on ourselves, we're the only ones who can free ourselves. And so we take that responsibility for our own freedom. And then, of course, on then other levels, kind of the fruition, we're also exploring the emptiness of I of self. And that fruition is like the state of like an arhat, where we're free of, our negative emotions and creating more negative emotions. We've directly perceiving the illusory nature of this conglomeration of interdependence that we call me or I. And then, but it doesn't stop there. We continue, and that's where the Mahayana comes in, where our focus isn't just taking responsibility for our own liberation, but with a heart of love and compassion and caring and wisdom of seeing how open the situation is. We take the responsibility to free all beings from suffering and its causes, to give them the means. So the focus is wider, and we're also taking everything onto the path. We're not excluding anything from the path of purifying and awakening. And then the fruit is Buddhahood through all the paths and the bhumis. So from now, and again, until attaining the heart, until samsara becomes empty, I shall accomplish the benefits and happiness of all sentient parent beings. So it is so rich, these lines of, and I think one really helpful way, at least to relate to everything, is if we remember the two truths. There's relative truth, there's absolute truth. There's what's the word? Rinpoche used it a lot during the teachings. As far as in the Buddhist teachings, there's kind of, not preliminary, there's definitive meaning, and provisional. There's provisional meanings, and then there's absolute meanings. And as we've all heard many times, with our bodhicitta practice, we're engaging in awakening our absolute bodhicitta realization, again, for the benefit of all beings. And we do that through the skillful means of accumulating merit and uprooting our ego clinging through our relative bodhicitta, which is, really connecting again and again with the four boundless and actualizing our wish for enlightenment for the benefit of all beings through the 6 paramita practices, right? But then just looking at these lines, until samsara becomes empty, from now until samsara becomes empty, we can have this big view of, we're in the meditation, we're here before Guru Rinpoche, and all all-seeing, all-knowing, all-loving wisdom of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are right with us, taking witness of us and our inspiration and our aspiration and our joy and our commitment and our humbleness of caring for this supreme wish. And we have, the 5 paths, which is the way the Buddha mapped out the path to enlightenment. When we first meet the teachings, the accumulation path, and then we connect with our meditation and our practice and study, and then we progress into the joining, the bridge of actually beginning to have realization of what the Buddha is pointing us towards. And then the path of seeing, where we actually see directly and unmistakably the open, empty nature of ourself and all phenomena. And then the path of meditation is the continued purification through then what's called the 10 bhumis of the bodhisattvas, until the path of no more learning of our Buddhahood. And so obviously we don't have time to go through those, but it's really helpful to look at the descriptions of the 5 paths and the 10 bhumis, at least their names and a little bit of their qualities. And I know in Rinpoche's book, Door to Inconceivable Wisdom and Compassion, there's a chapter, I think the last chapter is on the 5 paths. And also Rinpoche's very briefly go over the 10 bhumis. And is it also in a more recent book too, going over the 5 paths and 10 bhumis?
It must be.
I think in one of the newer the books of like walking in the footsteps. I think, but anyway, it's definitely here. And it's, I'm sure, lots of other places too. But that's a big view. But the important part is, from now, no matter where we're at, no matter what we've done, good or bad, helpful or not, no matter what our degree of realization, we have the precious bodhicitta. From beginningless time, we and all sentient beings have been wandering, all wanting happiness, but doing all the things that lead us further away from it due to our ignorance and being caught up in our hopes and fears, and just creating more and more obscurations. Like it said, from now until attaining enlightenment, until samsara becomes empty. So yes, we need to recognize empty. So I think there's a metaphor here of, yes, on one level it is like a metaphor of the opera house being empty. All the players have gone home. All the audience has dispersed, or, But definitely the deeper meaning is until samsara becomes empty. So we need to accumulate, achieve the 2 benefits. We need to benefit, before we can benefit anyone, benefit ourselves through having that wisdom of seeing the emptiness of ourselves and others, and all these skillful means, practices we have that help us get there through intellectual analysis and heart practice, and all these skillful means practices we have also with our Vajrayana practices. And then with that, naturally comes our, not only our compassion and our love being more open and vast, but actually more informed and more beneficial. And through that compassion and love, we are helping others to also recognize the inseparability of samsara and nirvana, to recognize, which is what? The border is our own mind, that vast openness. There's also, that very famous story of Chenrezig, of thousand-armed Chenrezig. How, like, as a bodhisattva, Chenrezig did many beneficial activities that emptied samsara, but then before you knew it, it's full again of sentient beings and just that heart-wrenching quality. And then it said that through that, he really broke up. But obviously, he continued. So the point, I guess the main point I'm getting at is, like it said in the sutras, as we could sit, there's no way we could measure space. It's infinite, it's without limit. It's inconceivably vast openness is space. And within space, as far as there's space, the Buddha said, the omniscient ones, the knowing ones, there are sentient beings. and sentient beings are there. The only difference between sentient being and fully enlightened Buddha is the recognition and realization of their innate nature in different degrees. And we are, and of course, may we all realize it. And truly, that's why it's so important we practice and meditate. Shamatha meditation. Develop our concentration. Develop our insight and our intellectual capacity to investigate our reality. And settle and practice. Because then we aren't tricked by the display. Because I think that's the important point here, right? And it's very important in the Bodhisattva motivation. There is no end line. The only end is, our own samsara, and then as each being recognizes their true nature and purifies, then their samsara ceases. But it's endless. It's vast, and it's all open and empty of being anything solid or permanent or independent. So it's big, vast view. We've all heard again and again, but really bringing it to heart into our practice from where we are is so important. So yeah, we're just as real as the Buddhas. And we shouldn't confuse, I don't know, in the second question here of we're all dream beings, we're all illusory beings. And when we're less than, and others are more important than ourselves, and we see how open the situation is, then we're good. But we shouldn't, not to confuse the relative truth that as long as we don't recognize the nature, we all have our samsara experiences. And we're not kind of establishing a nihilist view that nothing matters, or I don't exist, so why do anything, or people's pain isn't real, so what? I think we all know we're saying that, but on the relative level, we experience things. On the ultimate level, we don't have any difference. So I think the other thing I wanted to get at was what are some really points. We've talked again about how important our motivation is. That is, arousing, the way bodhicitta is defined is, may I attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient parent beings. And in the Mahayana teachings are also that motivation, and that is so prime and so vital, because that is how the nature acts in an uncontrived way. And also with that are the teachings on the nature the Buddha gave of great emptiness. So definitely that's another great book to read if you haven't, is Khenpo Tsewang Rinpoche and Khenpo Tsewang Rinpoche's book on the Heart Sutra, which so clearly goes through this profound teaching on great emptiness, but also in a way also shows us, the first turning, second turning, and then base for the third turning of the Buddhist teachings. So then, here we are, from now until attaining the heart of enlightenment. We take refuge in the three jewels, whose sole embodiment is the precious Lama, our precious teacher. And before our precious teachers and all the noble ones, we make the commitment until samsara is empty, until all beings recognize the vast openness, until I'm going to keep going, unfolding, awakening, in order to truly be of benefit to all beings, to recognize their innate freedom. And I'll work for the benefit of all sentient parent beings. And what is that benefit? It is awakening. Awakening bodhicitta, acting bodhicitta. So then within our tradition and our lineage, which of course it all comes through Buddha Shakyamuni, the great kindness teacher in this fortunate age, who we're all connected to, who was a great bodhisattva and a fully enlightened Buddha, now living. And then there's also these other great bodhisattvas still existing. So our lineage of taking the bodhisattva vows in this world and in our living lineage is coming from, of course, Buddha Shakyamuni. And then there's called what's the profound bodhisattva lineage. And profound. But that's coming from Bodhisattva Manjushri. And from Manjushri came to Nagarjuna. And Nagarjuna came down to Shantarakshita. And then, of course, Shantarakshita came to Tibet and was held and brought down into Tibet. And then also the other profound lineage is coming into this world. Again, Buddha Shakyamuni. And then from the great Bodhisattva Maitreya to Sangha in India. And then one of Sangha's students in the Bodhicitta trainings and teachings was Atisha, and then Atisha came to Tibet. So Shantarakshita, Atisha to Tibet, coming down in that rich tradition to Longchenpa. And then Longchenpa gave those teachings to the great teacher Minling Turchen, the great Minling Turchen of Minderling Monastery, which was such a renowned, powerful practice lineage and study practice going there. To Lotchen Dharma Shri, and came down eventually to, again, His Holiness Dudjom Rinpoche, and then to our precious Khenchen Palden Sherab Rinpoche and Khenpo Tsewang Dongyal Rinpoche. So in any case, that's there. And then when we take our bodhisattva vow, we're doing that in our Ngondro, in this section, every time renewing it. But then I just thought I'll stop talking soon, but just some basic points that are helpful for remembering with our bodhisattva training. Because again, all our Ngondro practice and our Ngondro practice and our bodhicitta practice, of course, we're touching home base. We're doing the meditation on our cushion, but the point is to bring out that quality, those atmosphere, that view, and let our conduct follow with that, like wherever we go. On the cushion, off the cushion, formal practice, informal, meditation, post-meditation. And so the conduct of the bodhisattvas is, of course, always based on the four boundless, connecting with the aspirational relative bodhicitta of the four boundless. And then, based on that, we have what's called the three moralities of the bodhisattvas that we can check in with, just as really simple guideposts. And that's like the morality of avoiding negative actions and engaging in positive actions. The four negativities and engaging with the and then there's the morality that gathers all good things. And then there's the morality that is actually performing beneficial activities for beings. So again, the four negativities are classically brought up into, we're avoiding things. We're not going to lie. Of course, there's many other precepts we're going by. And I'll just add, we're not going to lie. And in particular, we're not going to use our speech to deceive anyone, but particularly our teachers, our elders, those who we truly honor. So we're not going to deceive, And what are we going to do? We're going to speak truthfully to everyone, but then again, especially those we honor, those who've helped us, our elders, our teachers, the noble ones. And then we're not going to make people feel regretful. There's no need to guilt trip anybody. Instead, we're going to encourage ourselves, encourage each other in meaningful ways, even in working with our challenges, especially in working with our challenges. And we're not going to criticize. If we fall into being criticizing and talking shade about, anyone, but especially sincere practitioners and noble beings. And if someone hears that or they hear it, we've broken it. And then the fourth thing we're going to avoid is our cunning ego tricks of really kind of in a cunning way manipulating others in order to kind of get our, less savory agendas taken care of. And so we're going to avoid that, and we're going to engage in just honest compassion and uncontrived, no agenda giving according to how we can. And then the second morality that gathers all virtues, that's essentially, again, looking more at the actualizing practices. When we actually are practicing, meditating, studying, practicing. And then again, within the frame of our Bodhisattva training in the 6 paramitas, actualizing our Bodhichitta. Uprooting our ego clinging, increasing our wisdom, bringing out our good qualities and beneficial qualities. And then there's actually the action of doing beneficial activities besides the beneficial activities of our own study, contemplation, and practice. The practice of just doing beneficial things. And the four guidelines around doing beneficial things we can look at is be generous, give what we can. If someone needs something and it's something we can give, then we give. Again, give without any need for getting anything back or any sense of outcome. And then in our verbal activities, just speaking meaningfully and gently and respectfully, kindly, and as much as we can be aware of, especially sensitive spots with people. Then that's another. So speaking meaningfully, kindly. And then we also want to always act within our own capacities. We want to be skillful in our activities. We want to be kind of really aware of what's within our capacity to give and do, but also it's equally and really important too to develop our abilities to be aware of giving to people what they actually need and according to their readiness and their capacities on whatever level. That's a very important training. I think we've all experienced different fumblings with that, And then the fourth is just being an ordinary person, being equal. Recognize we're all in the same boat. We all have the same beautiful nature, and we're all, at least I'm an ordinary being. So just kind of just being straightforward, open, honest, equal, not taking a higher than thou attitude or a lower than thou attitude necessarily, but walking our talk, actually having our actions really reflect our true motivation and vice versa. So that's that. And then of course, as I've said this, I'm thinking how, I wouldn't call it quite hypocritical, but we all have a long way to go. I certainly do. And because I am a sentient being who's, just at the very beginning of the path, that means I have lots of obscurations and lots of habitual patterns that do create more trouble for myself and others. So here we are, and when we make this really big commitment before all the noble ones, and we do have downfalls where we do, due to different reasons, make mistakes and fall into our negative habitual patterns, get caught up in our sneaky ego tricks, As soon as we become aware of that, then we purify and restore our vows. And that's why it's so good to, as much as we can, restore our bodhicitta motivation, our joy and appreciation, our devotion with all of that. And that can be done, of course, within our Ngondro practice. In a way, we're doing that in our bodhisattva section. And then definitely we can be purifying our bodhisattva downfalls during our Vajrasattva practice, for sure. And then if we want to do additionally to that, we have also every 10th day, when we have our Gana Chakra ceremony, the stainless king and the Vajrasattva practice we do there, that's definitely purifying. It's purifying all the mistakes and downfalls we've had in every level of our training, and our Pratimoksha training, our Bodhisattva training, our Vajrayana training, and the vows and commitments we're refreshing and correcting any kind of misuse we've had. And we do that, we want to maintain that all as much as we can, being mindful, alert, conscientious. So I really should stop talking. I hope that was helpful. There's so much to say around bodhicitta. One thing, I'm going to recommend another really good book around bodhicitta. It's a really beautiful, beautiful book. It's so inspiring. It's like, what is bodhicitta? How big is bodhicitta? It's vast as the heavens, deep as the sea. But this book, it's published by Wisdom. It's by great, really great, so precious master of, the last century, Khenpo Rinpoche. It has a biography of him. This is his verses in praise of bodhicitta. And it's just so, so beautiful. It has the Tibetan and in a beautiful translation. It just goes on and on and on, praising bodhicitta. It's so vast. But also, Khenpo Rinpoche was not only this totally sublime, realized meditation master, Vajrayana master, he was so scholarly. And so it's the kind of praise and beauty you read, and it's telling us about the path, and it gets you curious, like, oh, what is this? So anyway, let's keep our bodhicitta. And I opened up this randomly, this famous quote he brings out about the qualities of bodhicitta. No matter where we are now, no matter, again, keeping that motivation and that aspiration and doing everything we can to protect and nurture that is so important. So even if a diamond is broken, it does not stop being called a diamond. Similarly, even flashes of bodhicitta do not stop being called bodhicitta. And it's a beautiful book, Vast as the Heavens, Deep as the Sea by Kunu Rinpoche. So thank you for sitting through that. I hope it's helpful. And please, I know someone else wrote too. I kind of addressed some questions you put there. I think that was from Kristen wrote too, asking some questions, so that, I'll try to get in touch with both Julie and Kristen, but I thought addressing some answers here, and then we can talk more in person too. So thank you. We'll do our Ngondro practice now. Thank you.